Dr. Richard Sterling slammed his fist on the mahogany desk so hard the antique lamp crashed to the floor. She's dead. Margaret Whitfield is finally dead. His silver hair caught the dim light as he grabbed his phone, dialing with trembling fingers. Get me everything on the air. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve. I've waited 15 years for this moment. That collection is worth $280 million, and some pregnant nobody from Boston is not going to stand in my way. Find her, tonight. If you want to see how a struggling pregnant woman discovers a fortune that powerful men would kill for, subscribe to my channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Sarah Mitchell's phone buzzed for the third time. She ignored it, pressing both palms against her lower back, trying to ease the ache that never went away anymore. 7 months pregnant, $52 in her bank account, and a husband who had walked out 3 months ago because their baby was inconvenient. The phone buzzed again. For God's sake, she muttered, grabbing it. Unknown number? Vermont. She almost didn't answer, almost let it ring out like she did with the landlord, the credit card company, David's lawyer. But something made her thumb slide across the screen. Hello? Miss Sarah Mitchell. That's me. Who's calling? My name is Robert Sullivan. I'm an attorney in Pine Ridge, Vermont. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Sarah straightened. Lawyers never called with good news. I don't know anyone in Vermont. No, but your great-aunt Margaret Whitfield knew you. The name hit her like a punch. Margaret, the family ghost. The aunt her grandmother had whispered about with a strange mixture of love and loss. The woman who'd sent a card when Sarah was born, containing a $100 bill and 3 words. She has her eyes. Did something happen to her? Miss Whitfield passed away 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry for your loss. Sarah closed her eyes. Thank you. Miss Mitchell, your great-aunt left you something. Her estate, the entirety of it. The words didn't make sense. Sarah opened her eyes, stared at the water-stained ceiling of the museum basement where she worked. I'm sorry, what? You're the sole beneficiary of Margaret Whitfield's will. I need you to come to Pine Ridge as soon as possible. There's a Victorian mansion on 12 acres. It's yours now. A mansion. 22 rooms, fully furnished, heated, ready for you to move in tonight if you'd like. Sarah looked around the basement. Filing cabinets nobody cared about. A desk older than she was. A single window letting in gray December light. She thought about her studio apartment with its dripping faucet and paper-thin walls. She thought about the eviction notice crumpled in her coat pocket. When do you need me there? Tonight, if possible. There's a snowstorm coming tomorrow. If you can't make it today, we may have to wait until after the holiday. I'm pregnant. 7 months? The house is warm, Miss Mitchell. You'll be comfortable there, and Margaret's housekeeper has been maintaining everything. You won't be alone. Alone. The word echoed in Sarah's mind. She'd been alone since David sat her down in their kitchen and said the words that shattered everything. I'm not ready for this. I'm not sure I ever will be. How do I get there? Robert gave her directions. 3.5 hours north. After she hung up, Sarah sat motionless. Her supervisor had left hours ago. The museum was empty. Nobody would notice if she disappeared. She pulled up her banking app. $52.37. Not enough for a motel if this was a scam. Not enough for gas to get back if the house didn't exist. But the alternative was staying here eating ramen for the 4th night in a row, crying in her bathroom where nobody could hear. Sarah grabbed her coat and walked out. The snow started just past Concord. Light flurries at first, then a steady curtain swallowing the highway. Sarah's old Honda shuddered against the wind. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. The baby kicked. It's okay, Sarah said out loud. We're going somewhere new, somewhere that might be ours. The GPS led her off the interstate onto smaller roads winding through pine forests. Towns grew farther apart. Houses disappeared. The roads narrowed. The car slid on a curve. Sarah's breath caught. She pumped the brakes. Felt the wheels catch, straightened out. Her hands were shaking. A sign emerged from the white pine ridge 23 miles. It felt like 100. The town materialized like something from a forgotten century. Main Street stretched 6 blocks. Old brick buildings sagging under winter's weight. A church steeple against the dark sky. Most buildings were dark windows, empty or boarded. Sarah followed the GPS to a small office building. A light burned in the front window. Sullivan, an associate's attorney at law. Inside, warmth wrapped around her. A man in his late 60s rose from behind a desk. Wire-rimmed glasses, wool cardigan, kind eyes. Miss Mitchell, thank you for making the drive. His gaze went to her belly. Please sit down, you must be exhausted. Sarah lowered herself into a chair. Thank you for seeing me so late. Robert poured coffee, handed her a mug, then opened a manila folder. Your great-aunt was my client for 41 years. She was very specific about her wishes. He slid a document across. Legal language swam before Sarah's tired eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. All property real and personal, complete and unconditional ownership. I don't understand. Sarah's voice came out barely above a whisper. Why me? I never met her. Margaret followed your life, Miss Mitchell. She had newspaper clippings about your graduation, your work at the museum. She knew you'd become an archivist. Robert paused. She found it fitting. Fitting for what? Robert pulled out an envelope sealed with red wax. A bird with spread wings imprinted in the seal. She left you this letter. She wanted you to read it at the house. Sarah took it. Her name was written across the front in elegant cursive. Tell me about the house. Built in 1889 by your great-great-great-grandfather, 22 rooms, Victorian architecture, Margaret lived there alone for 45 years. Alone for 45 years. She had help. A woman named Helen Barnes comes weekly, but yes, Margaret preferred solitude. Sarah thought about her own loneliness, 3 months of it, and how it had nearly destroyed her. 45 years seemed impossible. Robert handed her a ring of heavy, old-fashioned keys. These are for the house. Front door, back door, gate. Everything's ready for you. I can stay there tonight. Robert looked at her with something like kindness. It's your house now, Sarah. You can do whatever you want with it. 20 minutes later, Sarah followed Robert's truck through the blizzard. The road climbed upward. Pine trees crowded close. Robert's brake lights flared. He turned left. An iron fence appeared tall and Gothic. He unlocked a massive gate, waved her through. The driveway curved through trees for half a mile. Then the forest opened. Sarah's breath caught. The mansion rose before her. 3 stories of Victorian grandeur. Turrets and gables. Snow covered every surface. Windows glowed yellow in the downstairs rooms. The whole structure seemed to lean forward, watching her approach. Sarah put the car in park. The baby kicked hard. I see it, she whispered. I see it too. Robert appeared at her window. Everything's working. Furnace is on, lights are ready. Call if you need anything. He handed her a business card. I'm 5 minutes away. His truck disappeared into the snow. Sarah sat with the engine running. She could turn around, find a motel, come back in daylight. But the baby kicked again, and Sarah thought about the basement in Boston, the eviction notice, the $52 that wouldn't last the week. She grabbed her bag and ran through the snow. The front door was solid oak, 8 feet tall with stained glass panels. Birds in flight. Sarah fumbled with keys until she found the right one. Warmth rushed out. She stepped inside, closed the door, and pressed her back against it. The foyer stretched 20 feet. Grand staircase. Crystal chandelier. Parlor to the left, library to the right. Everything immaculate. Lemon polish and lavender in the air. Can we really live here? Sarah whispered to her belly. Is this real? The baby kicked in response. Sarah explored room by room, found the kitchen, found a note on the counter. Welcome, Sarah. I stocked the refrigerator. Coffee is in the cupboard. Helen. She opened the refrigerator. Full. Milk, eggs, bread, roasted chicken, vegetables. Sarah made a plate, sat at the massive dining room table, and ate real food for the first time in days. Tears streamed down her face. Someone had cared. Someone had thought about her. After dinner, she couldn't sleep. The letter sat on the counter, red wax seal catching lamplight. She wasn't ready. Not yet. At 2 a.m., she gave up on rest, carried the letter to the library, lit a fire, settled into a wingback chair. She broke the seal. My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, you've come to Pine Ridge. You've seen the house. And knowing your nature, you've already started asking questions. Some truths require ceremony. Some secrets demand we earn them. You're wondering why I chose you. Because you understand that some things are more important than money. Because you preserve history not for profit, but because it matters. Because you have your grandmother's eyes, and she was the only person who ever understood me. I am dying as I write this. Cancer, a few weeks left. I've made my peace with that. What I cannot accept is the burden I'm placing on your shoulders. In the attic there is a chest. The key is hidden in a copy of Jane Eyre on the 3rd shelf of this library left side. My favorite passage. I am no bird and no net ensnares me. What you're about to discover will change everything. It may frighten you. It will challenge you. But I believe you're strong enough. I know you're pregnant, Sarah. I know the father left. I know you've been struggling. What I'm leaving you will change both your futures if you're brave enough. Open the chest, learn what I've protected, then decide what happens next. With all my love. Margaret. Sarah read it 3 times. Her hands were shaking. She found Jane Eyre on the 3rd shelf, worn leather soft pages. She opened it and found the interior hollowed out. Inside lay a tiny brass key on a silver chain. So small, so delicate. She climbed to the 2nd floor, found narrow stairs at the end of the hall. Attic stairs. At the top, a door with a brass lock. The key fit. Cold air rushed out as the door opened. Scent of old wood and paper and time. Sarah pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through darkness, illuminating wooden steps thick with dust. The first dust she'd seen in the entire house. Whatever was up here, Helen hadn't been allowed to clean it. She climbed. The attic stretched the entire length of the mansion. Exposed beams arched overhead, shapes draped in cloth. Furniture. Trunks. Boxes. But in the center, illuminated by moonlight through a dormer window, sat something different. A chest. Large wooden, ornately carved. Alone on the bare floor, as if everything else had been pushed back, as if it had been waiting. Sarah walked toward it slowly, knelt before it, ran her fingers over the carving, flowers and vines, and there carved into the lid a phoenix rising from flames. She inserted the key. The mechanism released with a soft click. She lifted the lid. The world tilted. War bonds. United States. War bonds from 1943 and 1944, dozens of them. Sarah counted 37 before her hands shook too badly to continue, each worth $10,000 when purchased. 80 years of compounded interest. Millions of dollars. Beneath the bonds letters, names she recognized from history books. Eleanor Roosevelt thanking Margaret for invaluable service. Office of Strategic Services correspondence marked classified. A French museum curator calling Margaret the woman who saved what we thought was lost forever. Sarah spread the letters across the floor. A picture emerged. Margaret Whitfield hadn't been a hermit. She'd been a spy, recruited by the OSS during World War II to track artwork stolen by the Nazis. One letter, Margaret's own handwriting, never sent, dated January 1945. The paintings are hidden in the church basement on Rue de Rivoli. 3 Rembrandts, 2 Vermeers, a Raphael. If I'm caught, they won't just kill me. They'll destroy everything. But I can't walk away. These pieces are proof that beauty survives even in our darkest hours. Margaret had been 24, dodging Nazi officers, smuggling masterpieces. Sarah had been cataloging water-damaged ledgers. The 3rd layer held photographs. Margaret in her 20s, serious and determined, standing beside uniformed soldiers. Before a church with a wooden crate at her feet, a Vermeer visible through the slats. Shaking hands with a general. The 4th layer stole Sarah's breath. Certificates of authenticity, for pieces Margaret had purchased after the war. Between 1946 and 1953, Margaret had acquired 17 paintings and sculptures, each with documentation that made Sarah's heart pound. A Monet sketch purchased from a Jewish family rebuilding after losing everything. The certificate included a letter, "You gave us the money to start again. The painting is yours with our gratitude." A Degas bronze from a Paris auction. Provenance showing it had been looted from Amsterdam, recovered by Allied forces, sold to fund reconstruction. A Renaissance sketch attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. 17 pieces. Complete documentation. The most recent appraisal, Sotheby's 2019, estimated total collection value at $283 million. Sarah stared at that number. $283 million. She sat in the attic until dawn broke. Her phone was nearly dead. Her back ached. Her daughter had been still for hours. She thought about the $52, the eviction notice. David, who'd looked at their future and seen only burden. $283 million could give her daughter everything, but it would mean becoming what Margaret had been. Someone who hoarded beauty instead of sharing it. Her phone buzzed with its last battery. Notifications flooded the screen. Missed calls, text messages, numbers she didn't recognize. Galleries, collectors, museums, auction houses, offering money she couldn't comprehend for a collection they shouldn't have known existed. Margaret had kept the secret for 80 years. Sarah had been in the house less than 12 hours. The entire art world already knew. She ran downstairs, plugged her phone in, opened Margaret's laptop, typed Margaret Whitfield Collection. Article after article. Legendary Whitfield Collection may finally come to market. Rumors swirl about WWII-era art hoard. Death of reclusive collector sparks feeding frenzy. All dated within the last 2 weeks. Someone had been watching. Waiting. The most recent article published yesterday included a photo of this house. Telephoto lens. From the road. The final paragraph made Sarah's blood freeze. The new owner, identified as Sarah Mitchell, 29, is a low-level museum archivist with no experience in high-value art transactions. This is exactly the kind of situation where pieces can disappear into private hands without proper consideration, said Dr. Richard Sterling, professor of art history at Columbia University. We can only hope Miss Mitchell understands the responsibilities she's inherited. A knock at the front door made Sarah jump. She checked the window. A black Mercedes SUV in the driveway. A man in an expensive coat on the porch. Sarah walked to the door. Didn't open it. Who is it? Richard Sterling. I believe you just read about me. The professor who'd called her unprepared. Here. Christmas morning. How did you get through the gate? It was open when I arrived. The gate had been locked. Robert had secured it. What do you want? To help you, Miss Mitchell. You were an archivist yesterday. Today you're sitting on one of the most significant collections in the world. You need expertise. You need protection. Sarah's hand found her belly. The baby kicked hard. I didn't ask for your help. No, but you need it. His tone shifted harder. Within a week, you'll be drowning in lawsuits. Within a month, the IRS will be auditing every dollar. Let me take this burden off your shoulders. Those exact words. The same words David had used. Let me take this burden off your shoulders. He'd meant their daughter. What do you get out of it? A consulting fee. Academic recognition. My interests align with what's right. Another car pulled into the driveway, then another. 4 more vehicles within minutes. People stepped out expensively dressed, carrying briefcases. Sarah's heart pounded. Her daughter was still. Christmas morning. Strangers swarming her property. She grabbed her phone, dialed 911, held it up where Sterling could see. Get off my property. Sterling's eyes went cold. The mask fell away. You're in over your head, Miss Mitchell. A pregnant woman alone in a house she's never seen. With a fortune she can't protect. You think you can handle what's coming. You think you can fight people like me. I think I can try. You'll fail. And when you do, when you're desperate and scared and out of options, I'll be waiting. The offer won't be as generous then. Sarah's finger hovered over the call button. I'm giving you 60 seconds. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. 50 seconds. Sterling smiled, cold, calculating. We'll talk again soon, Miss Mitchell. Very soon. He turned, walked back to his car, spoke to the others. One by one, they returned to their vehicles. The Mercedes led the procession down the driveway. But at the gate, Sterling stopped, got out, looked directly at the house. He waved. Sarah watched until the gate closed behind him. Then she slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, one hand on her belly, shaking. The baby kicked, restless, anxious. It's okay, Sarah whispered. We're okay. But she knew it was a lie. She'd inherited a fortune, a legacy, 80 years of secrets, and the attention of a man who would do anything to possess them. Her phone rang, Vermont number, unknown. Miss Mitchell. A woman's voice, warm and worried. This is Helen Barnes. I was Margaret's housekeeper. I saw the cars leaving. Are you all right? Sarah's voice broke. I don't know. Listen to me. Margaret left something else for you, something those people don't know about. Don't leave the house. Don't open the door for anyone except me. I'll be there in an hour. What did she leave? The truth, Miss Mitchell, the whole truth. And when you hear it, you'll understand why Richard Sterling is so desperate to get his hands on that collection. You know him. I know what he is, and I know what he's capable of. Helen's voice hardened. Margaret spent 45 years preparing for this moment. She knew someone like Sterling would come. She knew they'd try to take everything from whoever inherited the estate. That's why she chose you. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm pregnant and broke and alone. Because you're strong, Sarah. Because you don't give up. Because when everyone else would have sold that collection for a fraction of what it's worth, you'll fight to do what's right. How do you know that? Because Margaret told me. She watched you for years. She saw how you handled your divorce, how you kept working when most people would have quit, how you talked to your baby when you thought no one was listening. Helen paused. She loved you, Sarah, even though she never met you. She loved you like a daughter. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. I don't know if I can do this. You can, and you won't be alone. I'm coming. Stay strong. 1 hour. The line went dead. Sarah sat on the floor of the foyer. Mansion she'd inherited from a woman she'd never met. Baby whose father had abandoned her. Secrets worth hundreds of millions. And somewhere out there, Richard Sterling was planning his next move. The baby kicked again. "I know," Sarah whispered. "We don't have a choice. We have to fight." She pushed herself to her feet, walked to the library, pulled Jane Eyre off the shelf. She opened to the page Margaret had referenced. "I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will." Sarah closed the book. "Neither am I," she said. "Neither am I." She looked out the window at the snow-covered mountains, at the world that had become more dangerous than she'd ever imagined, but also more beautiful. Somewhere in this house there were more secrets, more truths Margaret had protected, and Helen was coming to reveal them. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. "We're going to be okay," she told her daughter. "I promise, whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, we're going to be okay." The baby kicked in response, and Sarah Mitchell, 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, $52 to her name, began to understand that some inheritances weren't measured in money. They were measured in courage, in purpose, in the strength to carry burdens that would break most people. Margaret had carried hers for 80 years. Now it was Sarah's turn, and she would not let her great-aunt down. She walked back to the attic, back to the chest, back to the fortune waiting in the darkness. But this time she wasn't afraid. She was ready. Ready to learn the truth. Ready to face whatever came next. Ready to fight for her daughter's future. Ready to become whoever she needed to be. The snow continued to fall outside, soft and white, covering the world in silence. Inside the mansion, Sarah Mitchell began to read. Document by document, letter by letter, secret by secret, and with each one she understood more clearly what Margaret had been protecting. Not just art, not just money, but justice. For families destroyed by war, for beauty stolen by monsters, for history that deserved to be remembered. Margaret had spent 45 years paralyzed by impossible choices. Sarah would not make the same mistake. She would choose, she would act, she would fight, even if it killed her. The baby kicked one more time, strong and certain. "That's right," Sarah whispered. "That's exactly right." And somewhere in the darkness, she could almost feel Margaret watching, waiting, believing. The first chapter of Sarah's new life had begun, but the story was far from over. Richard Sterling would return. The secrets in the attic would demand answers. The fortune would attract more vultures than she could imagine. And Sarah Mitchell, alone in a mansion on Christmas morning, would have to decide what kind of person she truly was. A victim or a fighter? The answer would change everything. Not just for her, not just for her daughter, but for all the families whose stolen treasures waited in that attic. For all the ghosts of the past crying out for justice. For Margaret, who had trusted her with everything. Sarah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made her choice. She would fight, no matter the cost, no matter the danger, no matter who stood in her way. She would fight, and she would win. The baby kicked one final time as if in agreement. Mother and daughter, together against the world. This was their story now, and they were just getting started. Exactly 53 minutes later, headlights cut through the falling snow. Sarah watched from the parlor window as an old pickup truck pulled up to the front porch. A woman in her mid-60s stepped out bundled in a thick coat, carrying a manila envelope like it contained something sacred. Sarah opened the door before Helen could knock. "You're Sarah." Helen's eyes were red as if she'd been crying. "You look just like her photographs. Margaret showed me pictures of you every year on your birthday." "She had pictures of me." "She had everything. Come, we don't have much time." Helen walked past her into the foyer, moving with the familiarity of someone who had spent decades in this house. She headed straight for the study, a room Sarah hadn't explored yet. "You found the chest?" "Yes." "The bonds, the letters, the art documentation. All of it." Helen stopped at a wall of bookshelves. She reached behind a row of encyclopedias and pressed something. A panel clicked open, revealing a small safe. "Margaret told me about this 2 days before she died. Made me memorize the combination." Helen's hands trembled as she turned the dial. "She said when you came, I was to give you what's inside, no matter what." The safe opened. Helen pulled out a flash drive and a leather journal. "What is this?" "The truth, the whole truth, everything Margaret couldn't put in her letter." They moved to the study desk. Sarah plugged the flash drive into Margaret's laptop. A video file appeared. The timestamp read October 3rd, 6 weeks before Margaret died. Helen gripped Sarah's shoulder. Prepare yourself. Sarah clicked play. Margaret Whitfield appeared on screen. Thin, frail silver hair wispy around a face carved by time and illness. She sat in this very study in the chair Sarah had passed moments ago, but her eyes burned with intelligence and purpose. Hello, Sarah. Sarah's breath caught. Hearing her name in that voice, seeing this woman who had watched her from afar for 29 years. If you're watching this, you've found the collection. You've read some of my letters. You probably have more questions than answers. Margaret paused, gathering strength. I need to tell you the complete truth. Not the sanitized version in official documents. The real story. The video shifted to old photographs. Margaret in plain clothes on a Paris street. Margaret with resistance fighters. Margaret in a warehouse surrounded by paintings stacked like cordwood. In 1943, I was recruited by the OSS to help track Nazi art theft. I was 22, spoke fluent French and German, had a degree in art history from Wellesley. They sent me to France. Her voice continued over the images. What the Nazis did to art mirrored what they did to people. They stole it, categorized it, decided what had value and what should be destroyed. I spent 2 years helping recover pieces from trains, tunnels, caves, basements. We saved thousands of works. The video returned to Margaret in the study. But not everyone. Some pieces we recovered had no clear owner. The families were dead. The museums destroyed. The paper trails erased by bombs and time. Sarah leaned closer to the screen. In 1946, I was offered a position at the Metropolitan Museum. Good salary, prestige, everything I'd dreamed of. But the night before I was supposed to start, I went to a warehouse in Germany. 17 pieces sat there covered in tarps. Beautiful, important, homeless. And I realized if I walked away, they'd disappear forever. Margaret's hands tightened on the chair arms. So I made a choice. I used my connections, my knowledge of the system. I acquired those pieces, legally mostly, but I did it knowing the ethics were murky. I told myself I was protecting them until the right homes could be found. Her voice cracked. But years passed, then decades, and I never found those homes. I was too afraid of making the wrong choice. Too afraid of giving a painting to the wrong museum or traumatizing a family with reminders of what they'd lost. So I kept everything here. In the attic. In the dark. Tears rolled down Margaret's cheeks. I failed, Sarah. I spent my whole life protecting these pieces. But protection became imprisonment. I became the thing I'd fought against. Someone who hoarded beauty instead of sharing it. Sarah wiped her own eyes. Helen's hand squeezed her shoulder. I'm giving this burden to you because you understand something I learned too late. You preserve history, but you don't possess it. You protect stories so others can experience them. That's what I should have done. Margaret leaned forward, and despite her frailty, her voice grew stronger. The collection is worth a fortune, but money isn't the point. These 17 pieces represent 17 chances to right old wrongs. Some have living heirs who should receive them. Some belong in museums. Some should be sold to fund education and restoration. She sat back, exhausted. You'll face pressure from everyone who wants a piece of this. They'll tell you what you should do, what you must do. But the choice is yours. Sarah, you can sell everything tomorrow, take the money, live comfortably forever. Or you can do what I couldn't. You can let go. You can give these pieces the endings I was too afraid to write. Her eyes seemed to look directly through the screen. I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't expect you to solve every problem, but I do expect you to try. To be brave enough to make the hard choices, to honor not just the art, but the people whose lives are woven into every brushstroke. The video ended. The screen went black. Sarah sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Helen's voice was soft. She recorded that 6 weeks before she died. The cancer was winning, but her mind was sharp as ever. She wanted me to give it all away. She wanted you to do what's right, whether that means giving it away, selling it, donating it, or keeping some and releasing others. That's your choice. But she wanted you to make it consciously, not out of fear or greed. Sarah turned to face her. You said Richard Sterling is dangerous. Tell me everything. Helen sat down heavily. Margaret knew about him for years. He's not a professor, not really. He uses that title, uses his position at Columbia, but he's a middleman, a predator. What do you mean, Chwokak? He identifies vulnerable collections. Art owned by elderly people, by families in financial trouble, by heirs who don't know what they have. He applies pressure, creates crises, then swoops in as the solution. And takes a percentage. A massive percentage. Sometimes he arranges for pieces to disappear entirely, into private collections, offshore, places where no one can trace them. Sarah's stomach turned. He's been watching Margaret for years. 15 years that I know of. He tried to approach her in 2009, offered to help authenticate her collection. She refused. He's been waiting ever since. Waiting for her to die. Waiting for whoever inherited to be vulnerable enough to manipulate. He thinks I'm vulnerable. You're pregnant alone, broke, and you just inherited something worth more than most people see in 10 lifetimes. In his mind, you're perfect prey. Sarah stood up, paced the study. Her daughter kicked, restless. What about the people who came with him this morning? Are they all part of his network? Some. Others are legitimate dealers and collectors who caught wind of the story. The art world is small. News travels fast. Once word got out that Margaret died, everyone started circling. How did word get out Margaret kept this secret for 80 years? Helen's expression darkened. I've been trying to figure that out. Someone leaked information to the press within hours of her death. Someone who knew about the collection, knew about you, knew exactly what to say to create a feeding frenzy. Sterling. That's my guess. He wanted chaos. Wanted you overwhelmed from the moment you arrived. Sarah stopped pacing. It almost worked. Almost, but you're still standing. The leather journal sat on the desk. Sarah picked it up, opened it. Margaret's handwriting filled page after page. Notes on each piece in the collection. Provenance research. Potential claimants. Ethical questions she'd wrestled with for decades. One entry caught Sarah's eye. Dated 1985. I hired a lawyer today, a young man named Robert Sullivan. He thinks I'm eccentric. Maybe I am, but he's honest, and in this world that matters more than expertise. I've been alone too long. I need someone I can trust. She trusted Robert Sullivan. With her life, he's the only person in this town who knew the full extent of what she owned. Is there anyone else? Anyone who can help me understand what I'm facing? Helen pulled out a business card from her coat pocket. Margaret left this for you. She didn't put it in the video because she was ashamed, but she wanted you to have it. Sarah read the card. Colonel Daniel Foster, retired. FBI Art Crime Team. FBI. He investigated Margaret in 1986. Someone tipped off the Bureau that she was hiding looted art. Daniel Foster was assigned to the case. He spent 3 years digging into her collection. And he cleared her, found that while her collection was ethically complicated, she'd acquired everything legally. She was genuinely trying to do the right thing, just paralyzed by fear. They became friends. More than that, allies. Daniel's father was one of the Monuments men during the war. He understood what Margaret had been trying to protect. He's been watching over her from a distance ever since. Sarah stared at the card. Where is he now? 30 minutes away. He's been staying at an inn in Montpelier since Margaret passed. Figured you'd need help once the vultures started circling. Call him. Helen pulled out her phone. Already did. He's on his way. Sarah looked at this clock. 7:43 a.m., Christmas morning. In less than 6 hours, her entire life had changed. What happens now? Now you learn, you prepare, and when Sterling comes back, because he will come back, you'll be ready. The baby kicked hard. Sarah placed her hand on her belly. We'll be ready, she whispered. Helen smiled for the first time. Margaret was right about you. Daniel Foster arrived at 8:15 a.m. He was tall, lean, with military bearing despite civilian clothes. Gray crew-cut, weathered face, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He carried a toolbox in one hand and a leather messenger bag in the other. Sarah opened the door. Colonel Foster, you the archivist in Sarah Mitchell. Daniel Foster, spent 3 years investigating your aunt. Want to know what I found? Yes. A woman paralyzed by conscience. Spent 40 years unable to choose because every choice had a cost. Drove her crazy. Drove me crazy watching her. He walked past Sarah into the foyer, set down his toolbox. Security system in this house is 20 years old. Cameras don't work. Locks are antique. Anyone with a lockpick could be inside in 5 minutes. You're offering to help or lecturing me? Daniel cracked a smile. Both? Where's the collection? Attic. Show me. In the attic, Daniel examined the chest. Read through the documentation without touching anything. After 20 minutes of silence, he turned to Sarah. You know what you have here, $283 million. Wrong. You have 17 unsolved mysteries, 70 years of ethical quagmires, and a target painted on your back. Helen said you could help. I am helping. By telling you the truth, no one else will. His voice was hard but not unkind. Margaret was brilliant. Brave as hell during the war. Saved artwork the Nazis would have destroyed. But afterward she made a mistake. She thought she could solve every problem herself. That burden crushed her. I won't make the same mistake. Good. Then we've got work to do. Back in the study, Daniel spread photographs, photographs of each piece across the desk. First, we need 90 days to establish provenance and notify potential claimants. International law requires anyone with a legitimate claim be given opportunity to come forward. What if multiple people claim the same piece? Then we've got a legal battle. That's why documentation has to be bulletproof. Margaret did most of the work. We just need to update it. He pulled out his laptop. I've been researching these pieces for 15 years. Since Margaret wouldn't release them, I kept my own files, cross-referenced against Holocaust registries, museum theft databases, family genealogies. You've been doing this for 15 years. My father was there when they found the Altaussee salt mine in Austria, Nazi storage depot, thousands of stolen artworks. He spent 2 years after the war helping return pieces to rightful owners. Daniel's voice softened. Some reunions were joyful, most were heartbreaking. The art survived. The people who loved it often didn't. Sarah thought about the families in Margaret's notes. The Goldsteins of Vienna, the Cohens of Amsterdam, names erased by history. Show me what you found. Daniel opened files on his laptop. Some pieces are easy, the Monet sketch. Goldstein family has clear claim. 3 surviving grandchildren. Rachel in New York, David in Tel Aviv, Michael in London. Documentation is ironclad. We return it. Exactly, but some are complicated. The Degas bronze, 5 museums claim ownership, Dutch-French-American. We'll need an international panel to arbitrate. And the Leonardo, Daniel paused. That one's a nightmare. Why? If it's authentic, and I believe it is, it's worth more than the rest of the collection combined. 80 to 100 million. Maybe more, but there's no clear owner. Original family is extinct. Villa destroyed. Italian government has a weak claim. Swiss collector Margaret bought it from has a stronger one. So what do? We auction it, notify every potential claimant, give them 90 days to prove ownership. When no one can, we sell it through Christie's or Sotheby's. Money goes into the foundation Margaret wanted you to create. That feels wrong, like we're profiting from stolen art. Daniel's face was grim. Welcome to restitution work. Sometimes there are no good answers, only least bad options. This is what Margaret couldn't face, admitting that some problems don't have perfect solutions. Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Miss Mitchell? Sterling's voice smooth as oil. I hope I'm not interrupting. How did you get this number? I have resources you can't imagine. I'm calling to extend an olive branch. What happened this morning was unfortunate. I came on too strong. But my offer stands. Let me help you navigate this situation. I don't need your help. Everyone needs help, Miss Mitchell, especially when they don't know what they're facing. And what am I facing? Within 72 hours, you'll receive legal notices from at least 4 international governments demanding return of items in your collection. Within a week, the IRS will open an investigation into Margaret's estate. Within a month, you'll be sued by at least 6 families claiming rightful ownership of various pieces. Sarah's blood ran cold. You seem very certain about that. Because I've seen it before, many times. This is how it always goes for people in your position. The pressure builds, the walls close in, and eventually they realize they need someone who understands how this world works. Someone like you? Exactly like me. I can make those legal notices disappear. I can manage the IRS. I can negotiate with claimants before they become litigants. All I ask in return is a reasonable consulting fee and the right to broker any sales you choose to make. What percentage? 20%? Daniel was watching Sarah, his expression hard. 20% of $283 million. Consider it insurance. Without me, you'll lose half the collection to legal fees alone. With me, you keep 80% of everything. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. My patience isn't infinite, and neither is my goodwill. The line went dead. Sarah looked at Daniel. Did you hear that every word? He's not bluffing about the legal pressure, but he's the one who orchestrated it. How can you be sure? Because this is his playbook. He identifies a target, creates chaos, then offers to solve the problems he created. I've seen him do it to 7 families in the last decade. Can we prove it? Not yet, but we will. Helen appeared in the doorway. There's a news van outside the gate. Sarah went to the window. A white van with WCX Burlington painted on the side. A reporter and cameraman were setting up equipment. How did they find this place? Daniel joined her. Sterling. He's escalating. Wants to make this as public as possible. Why? Because public pressure works. If the whole state of Vermont is watching, you're more likely to make desperate decisions. Sarah's phone buzzed again, then continuously. She looked at the screen. Notifications flooding in. Emails, calls, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. It's starting, Helen said quietly. Over the next 3 days, Sarah learned what it meant to be hunted. Reporters camped outside the gate, their cameras pointed at the mansion 24 hours a day. News helicopters circled overhead. Headlines screamed across national media. Pregnant widow inherits Nazi art hoard. WWII fortune sparks international controversy. Who has rights to stolen masterpieces? The phone never stopped ringing. Sarah eventually unplugged it. Her cell was worse. Calls from people claiming to be lawyers, dealers, museum directors. Some offered help. Others threatened lawsuits. All wanted something. Legal notices arrived exactly as Sterling predicted. The Italian Ministry of Culture demanding return of the Leonardo sketch. The Dutch government claiming the Degas. A law firm in Israel representing the Goldstein family. A competing firm in London representing a different branch of the same family. Daniel was right. Multiple claimants for multiple pieces. The Monet alone had 3 families asserting ownership. On December 28th, the town council called an emergency meeting. Topic: the Whitfield collection and public safety. Kambuti, the notice read. Daniel warned her it was a trap. Sterling had been working the town, turning residents against her, but Sarah had to go, had to defend herself. The town hall was packed. 200 people filled every seat. More lined the walls. Sarah felt their eyes on her belly, on her face, on the weight of judgment they'd already passed. Ben Carver, owner of the Pine Ridge Gazette and town councilman, opened the meeting. We're here to discuss the security risks posed by the Whitfield collection. The recent media attention has disrupted our community. Strangers are flooding our streets. Our resources are stretched thin. We must consider alternatives. Richard Sterling stood. He'd been invited as an expert witness. Thank you, Mr. Carver. I've studied Miss Mitchell's situation carefully. While her intentions may be good, the facts speak for themselves. She's lost control of the narrative. International governments are demanding return of artwork. The IRS has opened an investigation. Insurance costs alone could bankrupt this town if something happens to those pieces while they're stored here. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I propose a solution. Transfer the collection to a secure, professionally managed facility in Boston or New York. Miss Mitchell retains ownership, but daily management falls to people with experience. More murmurs, some nodding heads. Carver looked at Sarah. Miss Mitchell, your response. Sarah stood. Her daughter kicked hard as if urging her forward. Mr. Carver, Dr. Sterling? Her voice was steady despite her pounding heart. Before you decide I'm incompetent, let me tell you what's actually happened. She walked to the front of the room. 200 faces, some hostile, some curious, all waiting. Margaret Whitfield spent 45 years protecting 17 pieces of artwork stolen by Nazis during World War II. She acquired them legally, but couldn't decide what to do with them. That indecision paralyzed her. She isolated herself rather than face the complexity of choice. Sarah projected images on a screen behind her. The Goldstein family photos. Museum documentation, legal paperwork. This Monet sketch belonged to the Goldstein family of Vienna. Solomon and Ruth Goldstein were murdered at Auschwitz. 3 grandchildren survived. Next week I'm returning it to them. She advanced to the next image. This Degas bronze has 5 legitimate claimants. 5 museums that lost artwork in the war. I've convened a panel of international experts to arbitrate. Whoever proves the strongest claim gets it. For free. Another image. 12 pieces have similar plans. Return to families. Donate to museums. Honor the people who lost everything. She paused, looked directly at Sterling. But 3 pieces, including the Leonardo sketch, have no clear owners. Families extinct. Museums destroyed. For those I plan to auction them and use proceeds to create a foundation. The Margaret Whitfield Foundation for Cultural Preservation. Money would fund art education support. Small museums help communities like Pine Ridge preserve their own history. Sterling's mask flickered, just for a moment. Dr. Sterling says I've lost control, but I haven't lost anything. I've made choices, difficult choices, the kind Margaret couldn't make. She turned back to the crowd. I'm 29 years old, 7 months pregnant. I was working in a museum basement 2 weeks ago, earning barely above minimum wage. I didn't ask for this inheritance, but I'm not going to run from it either." Her voice rose. "These aren't just paintings and sculptures. They're the last surviving evidence of families destroyed by hatred. They're proof that beauty can survive even when everything else is taken, and they deserve someone who will fight for them." She pointed at Sterling. "Dr. Sterling has been circling this collection for 15 years. He's not here to help me. He's here to take what he couldn't get from Margaret. Ask him about the 7 families he's helped in the last decade. Ask him where their collections ended up. Ask him how many pieces disappeared into private hands, never to be seen again." Sterling's face went red. "That's slander." "It's documented fact. Colonel Daniel Foster, retired FBI art crime team, has been investigating you since 2008. Want me to share what he's found?" The crowd turned to look at Sterling. The murmurs changed tone. Sarah pressed her advantage. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking for 90 days. That's standard under international law for establishing provenance. Give me 90 days to prove I can handle this. If I fail, we'll revisit this conversation." Sarah Bennett, the town librarian, stood. "I knew Margaret for 40 years. She donated money every year to keep our library open. Never asked for recognition. If she trusted Sarah with this collection, that's good enough for me." David Chen from the bookstore stood next. "Sarah's been here 1 week and already committed to doing the right thing. Returning art to families. Donating to museums, that takes courage." Walter Morrison, one of the oldest residents, rose slowly. "My father served in World War II. Told me about Nazis stealing artwork from homes, museums, churches. Said it was a second death for people who'd already lost everything. If this young woman is trying to right those wrongs, she has my support." One by one, people stood. Not everyone. Some remained seated skeptical, but enough to shift the atmosphere. Daniel spoke from the back of the room. "I propose we give Miss Mitchell 90 days. If she can't establish provenance and make decisions on all pieces within that time, then we revisit this conversation." Sarah Bennett nodded. "I second that motion." The vote passed. 147 in favor, 89 against. Sarah had 90 days. Outside the town hall, the December air cut through her coat. Sarah shivered exhaustion, finally catching up with her. Daniel walked her to his truck. "You bought yourself time. Now we use it." "Sterling's going to escalate." "Of course he is. He just lost face in front of the entire town. Men like him don't forget that." Helen joined them. "There's something else you should know. Maggie Cole, the postmistress, told me Sterling's been making calls, international calls, to dealers in Europe and Asia." "He's lining up buyers," Daniel said grimly, "planning to acquire pieces before we can establish proper provenance." "Can he do that legally?" "Legally, no, but Sterling doesn't care about legal. He cares about possession. Once a piece disappears into a private collection overseas, recovery becomes nearly impossible." Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. A text from an unknown number. "You just made a powerful enemy, Miss Mitchell. 90 days isn't as long as you think. Tick-tock." She showed it to Daniel. His jaw tightened. "He's declaring war. Then we'd better be ready to fight." Sarah looked back at the town hall, at the people filing out into the cold night. Some looked at her with hope, others with suspicion, all of them waiting to see what she would do. She thought about Margaret, who'd spent 45 years paralyzed by impossible choices. She thought about the Goldsteins murdered at Auschwitz, while their Monet hung in some Nazi officer's home. She thought about her daughter, who deserved to be born into a world where justice was possible. The baby kicked. 90 days, Sarah whispered. "We can do a lot in 90 days. She climbed into Daniel's truck. The war had begun, and Sarah Mitchell was done running. The first 2 weeks of January passed in a blur of legal documents, international phone calls, and sleepless nights. Sarah's body ached constantly now, 8 months pregnant, but she refused to slow down. Every morning at 6 a.m., she was in the study with Daniel, reviewing files, preparing responses to the flood of claims pouring in from around the world. On January 14th at exactly 2:17 a.m., Sarah woke to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. The baby kicked violently as if she too sensed danger. Another sound. Footsteps. Heavy. Moving fast. Sarah grabbed her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed Daniel's number. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Someone's in the house. Get to the safe room. Now. I'm calling police." Sarah threw off the covers, moved as quickly as her pregnant body would allow. The safe room was in the basement, a reinforced space Daniel had installed the week after Christmas. Steel door, independent phone line. Panic button linked directly to the police station. She made it to the hallway, heard voices below. 2 men, maybe 3. Check the attic first. That's where he said it would be. Sterling. This was Sterling's doing. Sarah's foot hit the top stair. It creaked. The voices below went silent. Did you hear that? Upstairs. Go. Sarah ran. Forgot about being careful. Forgot about her swollen ankles and aching back. Pure adrenaline carried her down the back stairs through the kitchen to the basement door. She yanked it open, stumbled down into darkness, found the safe room, slammed the steel door, threw the bolt. Her hands found the panic button. She pressed it 3 times. Then she pulled up the security app on her phone. 2 figures in black moved through the attic. Ski masks, duffel bags. They knew exactly where they were going. One headed straight for the chest. The other started grabbing documentation. Professional, efficient, no wasted movement. One of them pulled out the Leonardo sketch. Handled it roughly carelessly like it was nothing. Sarah's stomach turned. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. Police are 2 minutes out. Are you safe? I'm in the safe room. They're taking the Leonardo. Don't move. Don't make a sound. They don't know you're there. On the screen, the figures froze. Sirens in the distance. They looked at each other. One grabbed the sketch. The other grabbed a handful of folders. They ran. The security feed showed them exiting through a basement window. The same window Daniel had reinforced just last week. Someone had given them the entry point. Someone who knew the security system. Police arrived 4 minutes later. Then Daniel 2 minutes after that. He found Sarah still in the safe room, shaking one hand pressed against her belly. Are you hurt? No, but they took it. They took the Leonardo. Daniel helped her upstairs. The house was chaos now. Police officers everywhere dusting for prints, photographing the broken window, asking questions Sarah couldn't answer. Detective Morrison, a tired man in his 50s, approached her with a notepad. Miss Mitchell, can you tell me what happened? I woke up around 2:15, heard glass breaking, heard voices, 2 men, maybe 3. I went to the safe room and watched them on my phone. Did you recognize any of them? They were wearing masks, but one of them said that's where he said it would be. Someone told them exactly where to look. Morrison's eyebrow raised. Someone who... Richard Sterling. He's been trying to force me to hand over this collection since Christmas. When I refused, he threatened me. Do you have proof of these threats? Sarah pulled up the text message from December 28th. You just made a powerful enemy. TikTok. Morrison studied it. That's not exactly an admission. It's not a coincidence either. Daniel stepped forward. Detective, I'm Daniel Foster, retired FBI art crime team. I've been investigating Sterling for over a decade. This matches his pattern exactly. He creates crises to pressure owners into selling. With all due respect, Mr. Foster patterns aren't evidence. Then find evidence that Leonardo sketch is worth between $80 and $100 million. Whoever took it can't sell it legally. Every auction house and dealer in the world knows it's part of the Whitfield collection, which means they're either going to ransom it back or let it disappear into a private collection overseas. Morrison closed his notepad. We'll do our best, Miss Mitchell, but I'll be honest, recovery rate on art theft is less than 10%, especially when professionals are involved. After the police left, Sarah sat in the study with Daniel and Helen. Dawn was breaking outside. She hadn't slept. Her eyes burned. We lost it? Her voice was hollow. The most valuable piece in the entire collection. We'll get it back, Daniel said. How you heard Morrison? Less than 10% recovery rate. Because they can't sell it. The moment they try, we'll know. I've already sent photos and documentation to every major auction house gallery and dealer in the world. That sketch is radioactive now. So what do they want? They want you to panic, to make a mistake, to sell the rest of the collection cheap, just to get rid of the burden. Sarah's hands clenched. I won't give them that satisfaction. Good, because we have work to do. Helen brought coffee. Sarah wrapped her hands around the mug but couldn't drink. Her daughter was moving constantly now, restless and anxious. There's something else. Helen's voice was hesitant. Something I've been meaning to tell you. What? Margaret had secrets even I didn't know about, but she left me instructions, things to reveal if certain events happened. Sarah looked up. What events? If the collection was ever threatened, if someone broke into the house. Helen's eyes were troubled. She told me there was something hidden in the basement. Something she never told anyone about. Daniel straightened. What kind of something? I don't know. She just said if things got bad, really bad, I should tell you to look behind the old furnace. The wall isn't what it seems. Sarah was on her feet before Helen finished speaking. Show me. They went to the basement, past the safe room, to the far corner where an ancient furnace sat against the brick wall. Sarah had walked past it a dozen times and never given it a second thought. But now looking closer, she noticed what she'd missed before. The furnace was oddly placed, not centered, and the wall behind it looked different. Newer bricks, different mortar. Help me move this. Daniel grabbed one side, Sarah the other. They pushed. The furnace scraped across the concrete floor, revealing the wall behind it. Sarah ran her fingers along the bricks, found a seam, pressed. A section of wall shifted, clicked, swung inward. Behind it sat a small hidden compartment, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet. Inside was a wooden box. Sarah lifted it out, carried it upstairs to the study, set it on Margaret's desk. Her hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear. She opened the lid, and for the second time since arriving at this house, the world tilted on its axis. A painting, small, maybe 18 by 16 inches. A woman reading a letter at a window. Soft light falling across her face. Colors that seemed to glow even in the dim room. Sarah had studied art history. She knew what she was looking at. A Vermeer. No documentation. No provenance papers. Just the painting itself wrapped in acid-free tissue protected by cedar blocks. And beneath it a handwritten note. Margaret's elegant script. To whoever finds this, I am a hypocrite and a coward. This Vermeer is the 18th piece. I acquired it in 1947, same circumstances as the others. But I never documented it, never told anyone, never included it in my research. Why? Because it's the most valuable, worth more than all other pieces combined. And I was afraid. Afraid that if I admitted I had it, someone would take it. A government, a museum, a family with a claim I couldn't verify. I told myself I'd research it eventually, find the rightful owner, do the right thing. But decades passed, and I never did. This is my greatest shame. I became exactly what I fought against, someone who hoarded beauty out of fear. If you're reading this, I'm dead, and you must decide what I couldn't. Do you keep this secret, use it to solve your problems, or do you expose my hypocrisy and deal with the consequences? I don't envy your choice, but I trust you'll be braver than I was. Forgive me. Margaret Sarah read the note 3 times, then sat down heavily, one hand on her belly. Daniel picked up the painting, carefully examined it in the light. My God, if this is authentic, how much from 60 to 80 million, maybe more? There are only 34 known Vermeers in existence. This would be the 35th. Sarah's mind raced. With this painting, she could fund the foundation completely, settle any lawsuit, pay off every legal challenge, secure her daughter's future forever. But it would mean hiding Margaret's crime, because keeping it secret for 50 years was a crime no matter how Margaret justified it. It would mean continuing the lie. It would mean becoming exactly what she'd promised she wouldn't become. What do we do? Helen's voice was small. Daniel set the painting down. You have 3 options. All of them terrible. Tell me. Option 1. Keep this secret. Sell the Vermeer privately. I know dealers who'd buy no questions asked. Use the money for the foundation and to handle whatever comes from losing the Leonardo, but you live with Margaret's lie forever. Option 2. Go public. Admit Margaret hid this piece, document it properly, research provenance, do the right thing. But you destroy Margaret's reputation. The woman who fought Nazis, saved artwork, spent 45 years trying to do right. Her legacy becomes thief who hoarded a Vermeer. And option 3, Daniel's face was grim. Destroy it, burn the painting, destroy the evidence, end Margaret's lie permanently, but you destroy priceless artwork and solve nothing. Sarah stared at the painting. The woman reading her letter, frozen in a moment of private intimacy for 300 years. Those are all horrible options. Welcome to restitution work. There are no good answers, only least bad ones. The phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah answered. A voice emerged, digitally distorted. Miss Mitchell, you're looking for a Leonardo sketch. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? Someone who has what you want, and you have what I want. Money. See, you're learning. 15 million cash. You get the sketch back. No questions asked. I don't have 15 million. You just found a Vermeer worth 60 million. Don't insult my intelligence. Sarah's throat closed. How did they know the painting had been hidden for decades? She'd only discovered it an hour ago. How do you know about that? I know everything, Miss Mitchell. I've been watching this house for 15 years. Waiting for Margaret to die. Waiting for someone like you to stumble into my trap. Sterling. Laughter, cold, hollow. Sterling is a tool, nothing more. The real players in this game, you'll never see us coming. What do you want? 15 million. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the Leonardo disappears forever, and I start taking other pieces from your collection, one by one, until you have nothing left. The line went dead. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. They knew. Her voice cracked. They knew about the Vermeer, before I even found it. Daniel's expression hardened. That's impossible. Margaret hid this for decades. Someone told them, someone who knew Margaret's secrets. They both looked at Helen. The older woman's face went pale. You can't think I... You're the only one who knew about the compartment, Daniel said slowly. You're the only one Margaret told. I would never betray her. She was like a sister to me. Then who else knew? Helen's mouth opened, closed, her eyes filled with tears. There was someone else, someone I didn't tell you about. Who... Margaret's lawyer, the one before Robert Sullivan, a man named James Whitmore. He handled her affairs from 1960 to 1984. He died years ago, but his son... His son what? Helen's voice dropped to a whisper. His son works for Richard Sterling. The room went silent. Daniel pulled out his phone, started making calls. Sarah sat motionless, trying to process what she'd just learned. 15 years. Sterling had been planning this for 15 years. Not just circling Margaret's collection. Planting spies. Gathering intelligence. Building a network that would let him know every secret, every weakness, every vulnerability. And now he had the Leonardo. And he knew about the Vermeer. And he had 48 hours to decide the fate of everything Margaret had protected. I need to think. Sarah's voice was barely audible. I need to be alone. Daniel nodded. I'll be in the kitchen, making calls, trying to trace that number. After he left, Sarah sat with the Vermeer. Just her and the painting and her unborn daughter. The woman in the painting seemed to look at her, waiting, patient. What would you do? Sarah whispered. If you had to choose between your integrity and your family's future, no answer, of course. She picked up Margaret's note. Read it again. I trust you'll be braver than I was. But what did brave mean here? Brave to keep the secret and protect the foundation, brave to expose it and destroy Margaret's legacy. Brave to burn it all and walk away. Her daughter kicked, hard, as if demanding attention. I know, Sarah whispered. I know. She placed her hand on her belly, felt the movement beneath her palm. Her little girl, the reason she was fighting. The reason any of this mattered. What kind of world did she want her daughter to grow up in? A world where lies were acceptable if they served good purposes, a world where the ends justified the means, or a world where truth mattered even when it was painful, where doing right was more important than doing well? Sarah closed her eyes, made her decision, picked up her phone and dialed. Daniel, I need you to research the provenance of this Vermeer, full documentation. If a rightful owner exists, we find them. Silence on the line. Then you're going public with it. I'm doing what Margaret couldn't. I'm telling the truth, all of it. That'll destroy her reputation. Maybe. Or maybe it'll prove that even heroes make mistakes. That doing the right thing is never as simple as we'd like. What about the ransom, the Leonardo? Sarah's jaw tightened. Set up a meeting. I'll handle that myself. Sarah, you're 8 months pregnant. You can't. I can and I will, because Sterling thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm scared. He thinks I'll do anything to protect what I have. Won't you? No, Sarah's voice was steel. I'll do anything to protect what's right. And right now, that means facing this head on. She hung up before Daniel could argue. Then she called the unknown number back. It rang 3 times. The distorted voice answered, Change your mind already. I want to meet, face to face. Laughter. You have more courage than I expected. Name the time and place. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., the old mill outside town. Come alone. I'll be there. And Miss Mitchell, bring the money. All 15 million. Or don't bother coming at all. I'll bring something better. What's that? The truth. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. Her daughter was kicking so hard it almost hurt. But for the first time since Christmas, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months. Control. She didn't have $15 million. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have anything except her conviction that some things were worth more than safety. But she'd learned something in the past 3 weeks. Something Margaret had taken 45 years to understand. Fear was a prison. The only way out was through. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into that mill, face whoever was behind this, and one way or another end it. Not for Margaret's legacy, not for the collection, for her daughter, for the families who'd lost everything, for the simple, terrifying belief that doing right mattered more than doing well. Daniel found her an hour later still sitting with the Vermeer. "You're really going to do this?" "Yes." "You know it could be a trap." "I know." "You know you could lose everything." "I know that too." Daniel sat down across from her. His eyes were tired, worried. "I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen a lot of brave people, a lot of stupid people too. The line between them is thinner than you'd think." "Which am I?" "I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow night." Sarah almost smiled. "Will you be there, outside the mill?" 50 feet away, recording equipment, backup from the state police. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. "You can't know that." "No, but I can choose to believe it anyway." Daniel shook his head. "You sound like Margaret. She used to say things like that right before she did something incredibly dangerous." "Did she survive?" "Usually. Not always unscathed, but yes, she survived." Sarah looked at the Vermeer again. The woman reading her letter. "What do you think she's reading in the painting?" Daniel studied it. "Love letter probably. That's what most scholars think. Maybe, or maybe it's something else. Instructions, directions, a map to something important." "Like what?" Sarah touched her belly, felt her daughter move. "Like the next step, the one that changes everything." She stood up. "I need to rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "Sarah." She paused at the door. "Whatever happens tomorrow night, whatever you decide about the Vermeer, about Sterling, about all of it, I want you to know something." "What?" "Margaret would be proud of you. I know because I worked with her for years. I know what she valued. And you have it. Whatever it is. The thing that makes people brave when they should be afraid. The thing that makes them fight when they should run." "I'm not brave, I'm terrified." "That's what brave is. Being terrified and doing it anyway." Sarah nodded. Walked upstairs, lay down on the bed she'd slept in for 3 weeks now. Her daughter kicked, settled, kicked again. "Tomorrow," Sarah whispered, "tomorrow we end this." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, she slept. At 9:47 p.m. the following night, Sarah drove toward the abandoned mill. The roads were empty. Snow had started falling again, soft and gentle, covering everything in white. Her headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. Daniel's voice crackled through the earpiece he'd insisted she wear. "We're in position. State police half a mile out. I'm behind the tree line 50 yards from the main entrance." "I hear you." "Remember the signal. If anything goes wrong, say the word impossible. We'll be inside in 30 seconds. Got it." "Sarah, are you sure about this?" She thought about Margaret, who'd spent 45 years paralyzed by fear, about the Goldsteins murdered at Auschwitz while their Monet hung in a Nazi's office, about her daughter who deserved to be born into a world where justice was possible. "I'm sure." The mill materialized through the snow. Old brick crumbling walls, broken windows like empty eye sockets. A place that had once meant something now forgotten. Sarah parked, grabbed a duffel bag from the passenger seat, got out. The cold hit her immediately, biting through her coat. Her belly felt enormous, unwieldy. Every step was an effort, but she kept walking. The mill's entrance was a rusted metal door half off its hinges. Sarah pushed through, found herself in a cavernous space, machinery, long silent moonlight filtering through holes in the roof. A figure emerged from the shadows. Then another. 2 men. Ski masks, the same ones from the security footage. "You came alone," the distorted voice coming from somewhere behind them. "I'm impressed." "Where's the Leonardo?" "Safe, for now." A third figure stepped forward, not wearing a mask. Silver hair catching the moonlight. Richard Sterling. "You?" Sarah's voice was flat. "I knew you were involved." "Involved?" Sterling laughed. "My dear Miss Mitchell, I orchestrated this entire situation. Every legal challenge, every media story, every pressure point that's been squeezing you for the past month. Why you're already wealthy, already connected. Because that collection belongs to people who understand its value, people who will ensure these pieces go to the right collectors. Private collectors. People who will appreciate them properly, not donate them to museums where anyone can see them. You want to hide them. I want to preserve them, the way Margaret should have, instead of leaving them to some pregnant nobody who thinks she can play hero. Sarah's hand found her belly. Her daughter kicked. Where's the Leonardo? Sterling nodded to one of the masked men. He brought forward a wrapped package, held it up. Right here. Perfectly preserved. Unlike what will happen to it if you don't cooperate. What do you want? I already told you. 15 million, plus the Vermeer, plus your signature on documents transferring the rest of the collection to a holding company I control. That's not what you said on the phone. Negotiations evolve. You found a $60 million painting I didn't know about. That changes the equation. I'm not giving you anything. Sterling's smile faded. Then this conversation is over, and so is the Leonardo. He nodded to the man holding the package. The man pulled out a lighter. No, Gisky. Sarah stepped forward. Stop right there. Sterling's voice was ice. One more step and he burns it. Right now. Right in front of you. Sarah froze. You're bluffing. That painting is worth $100 million. To you. To me it's leverage. And leverage only works if you believe I'll use it. The lighter flickered. The man held it close to the wrapped painting. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Fine, her voice cracked. Fine, I'll give you what you want. Sterling's smile returned. I knew you'd see reason. But I need something first. What? Proof that you'll actually let me go, that you won't just take everything and leave me with nothing. Sterling considered. Fair enough. What kind of proof? I'll need your word, recorded, that this transaction is complete and you'll leave me alone. You want me to incriminate myself on tape. I want insurance, same as you. Sterling laughed. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. Let me think about it. He turned away, conferring with his men in low voices. Sarah's hand moved to her ear, pressed the earpiece slightly. Now? She whispered. Nothing happened. Daniel, now. Still nothing. Sterling turned back around. His expression changed. Colder, more dangerous. Did you really think I didn't check for surveillance? Your FBI friend is currently being detained by my associates. State police were called away on a fake emergency. You're alone, Miss Mitchell. Completely alone. Sarah's blood turned to ice. What do you want? I already told you. Everything. I don't have $15 million. I never did. I know. That's why you're going to sign these documents instead. He pulled papers from his coat. Transfer of ownership. All 17 remaining pieces, plus the Vermeer, plus the estate itself. And if I refuse, Sterling nodded to the man with the lighter. The flame touched the corner of the wrapped painting. Then we start with the Leonardo, and move on from there. Sarah watched the fire begin to catch. Watched 300 years of history start to burn. Stop, I'll sign. Sterling raised his hand. The man extinguished the flame. Smart choice. He handed her the papers. A pen. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them. This was it. Everything Margaret had protected for 80 years. Everything Sarah had fought for. Gone. In the stroke of a pen. She thought about her daughter. About the life she'd wanted to give her. About the truth. And then she thought about something else. Something Margaret had written in her final note. I trust you'll be braver than I was. Sarah looked up at Sterling. No. Excuse me. I said no. Miss Mitchell, I don't think you understand your situation. I understand perfectly. You're going to take everything regardless of what I sign. These documents just make it easier for you legally. But if I don't sign, you have to steal it. And theft can be prosecuted, can be traced, can be exposed. Sterling's face reddened. You're willing to let me burn $100 million worth of art just to inconvenience me. I'm willing to let you burn it because you're going to anyway, whether I sign or not. At least this way there's a record, a story, evidence. She dropped the papers on the ground. Do your worst. Sterling stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a cold, hollow sound. You know what I believe you. I believe you'd watch me burn every piece in that collection just to prove a point. I would. Then you're crazier than Margaret ever was. He shook his head. Fine, burn it. The man with the lighter touched flame to the painting again. Sarah forced herself to watch, forced herself not to cry. The fire spread. The wrapping caught. And then the man yelped, dropped the package, stumbled backward. Sterling spun around. What the hell, blue lights? Dozens of them, flooding through every entrance. FBI, nobody move! Sterling's face went white. That's impossible. I had them. Detained! A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Daniel Foster stepping through the door, badge raised. Your associates are currently in custody, all 6 of them. Turns out state police don't like being manipulated. Agents swarmed the mill. Sterling's men were on the ground in seconds, hands behind their heads. Sterling himself stood frozen, staring at Sarah with something like disbelief. How I had everything planned, everything covered, Sarah smiled, for the first time in what felt like weeks. You forgot one thing. What? I never came alone. She reached into her coat, pulled out a small device, a transmitter, broadcasting to a frequency Sterling's jammers hadn't covered. Daniel's been listening the whole time. So have the FBI. So have about 30 other agents who've been building a case against you for the past 15 years. Sterling's face twisted with rage. You set me up. No, you set yourself up. I just gave you the opportunity to incriminate yourself completely. An agent approached, handcuffs ready. Richard Sterling, you're under arrest for art theft extortion and conspiracy to destroy cultural property. You have the right to remain silent. Sterling didn't struggle as they cuffed him, just kept staring at Sarah with those cold, calculating eyes. This isn't over. Yes, it is. They led him away, into the snow, into the waiting vehicles, into a future that would be very different from the one he'd planned. Daniel reached Sarah's side. You okay? I don't know. Her legs felt weak. Her whole body was shaking. Is it really over? The hard part is, Sterling's network is being dismantled as we speak. 30 arrests across 4 states. His entire operation. And the Leonardo? Daniel walked to where the painting had fallen, picked it up carefully, unwrapped it. Underneath the burned wrapper, the Leonardo sketch was intact, untouched. They used a copy for the fire, insurance, in case the real thing was needed for future leverage. Sarah laughed. The sound surprised her, hysterical, relieved, exhausted. It's over, she said. It's actually over. Her daughter kicked, hard, harder than she'd ever kicked before. And then Sarah felt something else, a warm rush, a pressure releasing. She looked down. Daniel. What? My water just broke. Daniel caught Sarah before her knees buckled. We need an ambulance. Now. An FBI agent was already on the radio. Medical emergency at the mill. Pregnant woman in labor. We need transport immediately. Sarah gripped Daniel's arm. Contractions were starting. Sharp, intense. 3 weeks early. The baby, she gasped. It's too soon. Babies come when they want to come. You're going to be fine. The collection, the Vermeer, the documentation, will all be here when you get back. Right now, the only thing that matters is you and that little girl. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. Paramedics loaded Sarah onto a stretcher, started an IV, checked vitals. Daniel climbed in beside her, holding her hand. I'm scared. Sarah's voice was small, younger than he'd ever heard it. I know. But you just faced down one of the most dangerous art criminals in the world. Childbirth is going to be a cakewalk. Sarah laughed despite the pain. That's not how it works. Maybe not, but you're the bravest person I've ever met. Your daughter's going to be just like you. The ride to Pine Ridge Hospital took 12 minutes, the longest 12 minutes of Sarah's life. Contractions came faster, harder. She squeezed Daniel's hand until her knuckles went white. At 11:47 p.m., they wheeled her into the delivery room. Dr. Emily Chen met them at the door. I've read your file, Sarah. 3 weeks early, but the baby's vitals are strong. You're going to be fine. How long? Hard to say. First babies take their time. Could be a few hours, could be longer. It was longer. The contractions intensified through the night. Sarah screamed, cried, begged for it to be over. Helen arrived at 2 a.m., sat beside her bed, wiped her forehead with cool cloths. You're doing so well, Helen whispered. Margaret would be so proud. I can't do this. Yes, you can. You've done harder things than this. Name one. You faced Richard Sterling with nothing but your integrity. You walked into that mill knowing you might not walk out. This is just pain. Pain ends. At 4:23 a.m., Dr. Chen announced she was fully dilated. Time to push Sarah. Your daughter's ready to meet you. Sarah pushed, screamed, pushed again. The world narrowed to nothing but effort and agony and the desperate need to bring her child into the world. "I see the head," Dr. Chen said. "One more push, just one more." Sarah gathered everything she had left, every ounce of strength, every bit of courage. She pushed. And at 4:47 a.m. on January 16th, Hope Margaret Mitchell entered the world. The cry that filled the room was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. Thin, reedy, perfect. Dr. Chen placed the baby on Sarah's chest, tiny, red, furious at being disturbed. "She's perfect," Dr. Chen said. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, all 10 fingers, all 10 toes. Sarah couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her vein. Her daughter looked up at her with unfocused eyes, and Sarah fell in love completely, irrevocably, forever. "Hope," she whispered. "Your name is Hope, because that's what you are. That's what you've always been." Helen was crying too. Daniel stood in the doorway, trying to look composed and failing completely. "She's beautiful," he said gruffly. "Looks like her mother." "She looks like a potato." "A beautiful potato." Sarah laughed, exhausted and delirious with joy. "I can't believe she's here. I can't believe any of this is real." "It's real." Helen squeezed her hand. "All of it. The house, the collection, the fight you just won, and now this, your daughter, your future." Sarah held Hope close, felt her warmth, her weight, her impossibly small heartbeat. For the first time in months, she felt complete. The next 3 days passed in a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and visits from well-wishers. The nurses at Pine Ridge Hospital fussed over Hope constantly. Robert Sullivan stopped by with flowers and a teddy bear. The town librarian brought a basket of children's books. On the 3rd day, an unexpected visitor appeared. Sarah was nursing Hope when the door opened. She looked up, expecting Helen or Daniel. Instead, she saw her mother. Catherine Mitchell stood in the doorway, looking smaller than Sarah remembered. Older, her eyes were red as if she'd been crying for days. "Mom?" "I saw the news," Catherine's voice cracked. "About Sterling, about the arrest, about you going into labor at that mill." "How did you get here?" "I drove 14 hours. I had to." She broke down, sobbed right there in the doorway, one hand covering her mouth. Sarah didn't know what to feel. 3 months of silence. Not a single call when David left. Not a word of support through any of it. And now this. "Why didn't you come sooner?" Catherine wiped her eyes. "Because I was angry. Because I thought you were throwing your life away. Because I couldn't understand why you'd give up $200 million to do the right thing when the right thing has never done anything for our family. And now? Now I watched footage of my daughter 8 months pregnant walking into that mill alone to face a criminal, and I realized I raised someone braver than I could ever be." She took a tentative step forward. "Can I see her, my granddaughter?" Sarah looked at Hope, at this tiny person who represented everything she'd fought for. "Her name is Hope Margaret Mitchell." Catherine's face crumpled. "After Margaret? After the woman who trusted me with everything, who believed I could do what she couldn't." Catherine crossed the room slowly, looked down at the baby in Sarah's arms. "She's beautiful. She's stubborn, like her mother. Like her grandmother, too." Catherine reached out, touched Hope's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around her thumb. Something shifted in the air between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something. "I was wrong about you," Catherine said quietly. "About all of it. You didn't throw your life away. You found it." "Mom, let me finish. I've spent my whole life being afraid. Afraid of being poor. Afraid of making mistakes. Afraid of losing what little I had. That fear made me hard, made me push away the people I love." She looked at Sarah with tears streaming down her face. "You're not afraid, even when you should be, and that terrifies me more than anything, because I don't know how to protect someone who runs toward danger instead of away from it. You don't have to protect me." "Yes, I do. I'm your mother. That never stops, no matter how old you get." Hope made a small sound, a gurgle, content. "Can I hold her?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She transferred Hope into Catherine's arms. Her mother held the baby like something precious, something sacred. "Hello, Hope," Catherine whispered. "I'm your grandmother, and I promise I'm going to do better for both of you." Sarah wiped her own eyes. "Does this mean you're staying if you'll have me?" "I'll have you, but Mom, there's work to do. Important work. Returning the artwork, building the foundation, making things right for families who lost everything. I need help, real help." Catherine looked at her. Really looked. Tell me what to do. I need someone to manage the day-to-day operations. Someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands what's at stake. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something that matters. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. When do I start? Sarah smiled. As soon as they let me out of this hospital. 1 week later, Sarah returned to the mansion with Hope cradled in her arms. Helen had prepared the nursery a sunny room on the second floor with a window overlooking the gardens. A crib sat in the corner, white lace, probably antique. Margaret's Helen said, from when she was a baby. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. 4 generations of Whitfield women connected by this house, this legacy, this impossible inheritance. Daniel met her in the study. Ready to get back to work? I've been ready for days. What's our status? Sterling's still in custody, no bail, too much flight risk. His network is unraveling. 32 arrests so far, 6 countries. The FBI is calling it the biggest art crime bust in 20 years. And the collection? Safe. All 17 pieces accounted for, plus the Vermeer. I've brought in additional security. Private contractors, former military. Nobody's getting near this house again. Sarah looked at the stack of files on Margaret's desk. Documentation for each piece. Research. Potential claimants. Where do we start? The Monet. Rachel Goldstein is in New York. She's agreed to meet with you next week. Sarah picked up the file. Inside photographs of the Goldstein family. Solomon and Ruth in Vienna, 1937. Smiling. In love. No idea what was coming. Their daughter Eva, who survived the camps, only to spend the rest of her life haunted by what she'd lost. Their grandchildren. Rachel David Michael, scattered across 3 continents. In the Monet sketch. Water lilies, soft colors, a moment of beauty from a world that no longer existed. Tell Rachel I'll be there. The meeting took place in a coffee shop on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Sarah arrived early, Hope sleeping in a carrier against her chest. Rachel Goldstein was already waiting. 67 years old, silver hair elegant in a way that reminded Sarah of Margaret. Beside her sat her brother David, who'd flown in from Tel Aviv. Sarah approached their table. Mrs. Goldstein, I'm Sarah Mitchell. Rachel stood, embraced her like family. Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything. They sat, ordered coffee, and Sarah told them the story. How Margaret had acquired the Monet in 1948. How she'd spent decades trying to find the rightful owners. How she'd finally tracked them down in 2015 but was too afraid to make contact. Why was she afraid? David asked. Because she didn't know if seeing the painting would bring you comfort or pain. She'd spent so long protecting it she couldn't bear the thought of causing more harm. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. My grandmother hung this sketch in her bedroom. My mother told me she'd look at it every morning while brushing her hair. It was the last beautiful thing she saw before. Her voice broke. Sarah reached into the portfolio case she'd brought, pulled out the Monet. Small, maybe 12 by 15 inches. Water lilies, soft light. She turned it to face Rachel and David. Rachel gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. David's eyes filled with tears. They didn't touch it at first, just stared, as if afraid it might vanish. My grandmother, Rachel whispered. She held this. She loved this. It's yours, Sarah said. It always was. Margaret just kept it safe. David finally reached out. His fingers hovered over Monet's signature. How can we ever thank you? By telling the world about your grandparents, about who they were before everything was taken. That's what Margaret wanted. That's what all this work is for. Not just returning objects, but returning stories. Returning humanity. Rachel wiped her eyes. Your aunt. She knew our family. She researched you for years. She knew your mother survived Auschwitz. Knew she moved to America after the war. Knew she never talked about what she'd lost because the pain was too deep. My mother died 5 years ago, never knowing any of it survived. She knows now. Sarah touched Rachel's hand. Wherever she is, she knows. They sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours. Rachel and David told stories about their grandparents. The apartment in Vienna with tall windows. The music Solomon played on his violin. The way Ruth would sing while she cooked. A family. Real people. Not just names in a file. When they finally parted, Rachel embraced Sarah again. You've given us something we thought was lost forever. Not just the painting, the connection, the proof that they existed, that they mattered. They did matter, they still do. Rachel looked at Hope sleeping peacefully in her carrier. Your daughter. She's beautiful. Thank you. What's her name? Hope. Rachel smiled. Perfect name. That's what you've given us today. Hope. Over the next month, Sarah repeated this process again and again. The Degas bronze went to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam after a panel of international experts arbitrated the claims. Sarah flew there for the ceremony, stood in the gallery as the piece was unveiled, watched visitors stop to admire something that had been hidden in an attic for 70 years. A Vermeer painting, not the hidden one, but a smaller piece with clear provenance, went to a family in The Hague. Their great-grandmother had been a collector before the war. Everything she'd owned had been confiscated. Most was destroyed or lost. But this piece survived. The great-granddaughter, a woman named Ingrid, wept when Sarah handed it to her. I never believed this day would come. My grandmother told stories about her collection, but we thought they were just stories. Fantasies of a woman who'd lost her mind to grief. They weren't fantasies. No, they were memories. Real memories of a real life. A Renaissance sketch went to a museum in Florence after the Italian government agreed to display it with a plaque honoring the original owners. 3 smaller pieces were returned to families across America. Each reunion was unique. Each one broke Sarah's heart and healed it at the same time. By April 12, pieces had found homes. And with each return, Sarah understood more clearly what Margaret had been trying to protect. Not just art, not just money, but the chance for justice, for healing, for stolen lives to be acknowledged and honored. She understood something else, too. Why Margaret had been paralyzed for so long. Because every return was complicated. Every family had competing claims. Every decision came with consequences she couldn't fully predict. The Monet, which had seemed so straightforward, led to a lawsuit. A distant cousin named Michael, whom Sarah had never heard of, emerged claiming he was the rightful heir. His lawyers demanded either the painting or $8 million in compensation. Sarah fought back, hired lawyers, spent 3 months in legal battles that drained resources she could barely afford. In the end, Michael dropped the suit. His case was weak and he knew it, but the experience left Sarah shaken. This is what Margaret faced, she told Daniel one night. Constant challenges, constant second-guessing, everyone wanting a piece of something they have no right to. And yet you keep going. What choice do I have? These families deserve their heritage back. Their stories deserve to be told. I can't let fear stop me. Margaret did that and it ate her alive. 3 pieces remained. The ones with no clear owners, the Leonardo sketch, the hidden Vermeer, and a small bronze sculpture of a dancer. Sarah made the decision in May. We auction them, all 3, and the proceeds go to the foundation. Daniel nodded. You're sure? I'm sure. These pieces don't have families to return to. The best thing we can do is use them to help others. Christie's agreed to handle the sale. The auction was scheduled for June 15th. In the weeks leading up to it, the art world went into a frenzy. The Leonardo alone was expected to bring between $80 and $100 million. The Vermeer possibly more. Sarah gave interviews, explained the history, told Margaret's story. The night before the auction, she couldn't sleep. She walked through the mansion Hope in her arms, talking to her daughter about things a 6-month-old couldn't possibly understand. Your great-great-aunt spent her whole life protecting these pieces, and tomorrow they'll go to new homes, people who will care for them, who will appreciate them. Hope gurgled, grabbed at Sarah's hair. I know, it's bittersweet, but some things aren't meant to be held forever. Some things are meant to be shared. She stopped in front of the hidden Vermeer, which was displayed now in the study. The woman reading her letter. Margaret hid you for 50 years. She was ashamed of keeping you, but I think she was also proud that she'd protected something so beautiful for so long. The painting seemed to glow in the lamplight. Tomorrow you'll find a new home. Someone will pay millions of dollars for the privilege of caring for you, and the money will do more good than Margaret ever imagined. Hope yawned. Her eyes drifted closed. That's the real legacy, Sarah whispered. Not the art, not the money, but the good we do with it. The auction exceeded all expectations. The Leonardo sold for $97 million to an anonymous buyer who turned out to be a consortium of museums planning to share the piece. The Vermeer went for $112 million, the highest price ever paid for a painting by that artist. The bronze sold for $8 million to a private collector who immediately donated it to the Metropolitan Museum, total $217 million. After Christie's fees and taxes, the Margaret Whitfield Foundation received $178 million. Sarah watched the numbers on the screen, trying to comprehend what they meant. That's a lot of museums we can help, Daniel said quietly. A lot of families we can support. A lot of history we can preserve. Catherine, who'd been managing the foundation's operations for months, now embraced her daughter. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. All of us. Helen was crying again. She seemed to cry a lot these days. Happy tears, she always said. Margaret would be so proud. I hope so. I know so. That night, back at the mansion, Sarah sat in the study one last time. The walls that had held artwork for 80 years were mostly bare now. The attic was empty. The hidden compartment behind the furnace stood open, a reminder of secrets finally revealed. But the house didn't feel empty. It felt ready, waiting for whatever came next. Hope slept in a bassinet beside the desk. 6 months old, growing so fast, already trying to roll over, grab things, explore her world. Sarah opened Margaret's journal to the last entry, the one written days before she died. I don't know who will inherit this house, this collection, this burden, but I hope they'll forgive me for placing it on their shoulders. I hope they'll understand that some inheritances aren't meant to make us wealthy. They're meant to make us worthy. I spent my life failing to live up to that ideal, but perhaps my successor will do better. Perhaps they'll have the courage I lacked. Perhaps they'll be brave enough to let go. Sarah closed the journal. I was brave enough, she said to the empty room. I let go, and the world is better for it. Hope stirred, made a small sound. Sarah picked up her daughter, held her close. And now it's your turn, to grow up, to learn, to become whoever you're meant to be. She carried Hope to the window. The Vermont mountains stretched toward the horizon, painted gold by the setting sun. Margaret gave me this house. She gave me a fortune. But the real gift was something else entirely. Hope looked up at her with those unfocused baby eyes. She gave me purpose, a reason to fight, a cause worth believing in. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. And now I'm going to give that same gift to you. A world where beauty is preserved, where justice is possible, where doing right matters more than doing well. The sun sank lower. The first stars appeared. That's your inheritance, Hope Margaret Mitchell. Not money, not art, but the belief that one person can make a difference. Hope yawned, content, safe, and the courage to try. The phone rang. Sarah answered with one hand, Hope cradled in the other arm. Miss Mitchell, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Foundation. We've received our first grant application. A small museum in Ohio. They're about to close due to lack of funding. 3,000 artifacts, some dating back to the Civil War. They need $200,000 to survive. Sarah smiled. Approve it. That's it. You don't want to review the application first. I trust your judgment. That's why I hired you. Thank you. There's something else. We've received requests from families in 12 countries. People who think we might be able to help them recover artwork lost during the war. How many requests? 47 so far, more coming every day. Sarah looked at Hope, at this tiny person who represented everything she'd fought for. Then we'd better get to work. She hung up, walked to the study, sat down at Margaret's desk, the desk where Margaret had spent 45 years paralyzed by impossible choices. The desk where Sarah had made the choices Margaret couldn't. She opened her laptop, started reviewing the requests. 47 families, 47 stories, 47 chances to right old wrongs. The work was just beginning, but Sarah was ready. She'd inherited a fortune. She'd inherited a legacy. She'd inherited 80 years of secrets and responsibilities, and she'd turned all of it into something beautiful. Not just art, not just money, but hope. Real, tangible, life-changing hope. For families who'd lost everything, for museums struggling to survive, for her daughter who would grow up knowing that some things were worth more than money. Margaret had spent her life protecting beauty. Sarah would spend hers sharing it. That was the real inheritance, and it was worth more than any fortune. The Margaret Whitfield Center for Cultural Preservation opened on October 15th, exactly 1 year after Sarah had received that phone call from Robert Sullivan. The mansion's third floor had been transformed into a museum. The second floor housed research facilities. The first floor remained as Margaret had left it, a window into the life of a woman who had carried an impossible burden for 80 years. Hope was 10 months old now. Crawling everywhere, grabbing at everything, filling the old house with sounds it hadn't heard in decades. Laughter, babbling. Life. Sarah stood at the entrance as the first visitors arrived. 200 people had registered for opening day. By noon, the number had doubled. By evening, over 1,000 people had walked through the doors. This is incredible, Catherine said, watching the crowds move through the exhibits. Margaret would never have believed it. Margaret would have been terrified, Sarah replied. All these strangers in her house, touching her things, reading her secrets. But proud too, don't you think? Sarah looked at the portrait of Margaret that hung in the main gallery, 24 years old, Paris, 1945, eyes fierce with purpose. I hope so. The exhibits Maria Santos had designed told Margaret's story from beginning to end, her recruitment by the OSS, her work in occupied France, the pieces she'd recovered and the pieces she'd acquired, the 45 years of paralysis that followed, and the hidden Vermeer. That exhibit drew the largest crowds. Margaret's confession was displayed alongside the empty frame where the painting had hung before the auction. A video played on loop showing the moment Sarah had discovered the secret compartment. Why did you include this? A visitor asked Sarah that afternoon, a young woman maybe 25 with earnest eyes. The confession makes Margaret look bad, like a hypocrite. Because she was a hypocrite, and so am I, and so is everyone who's ever tried to do the right thing and failed. I don't understand. Sarah led her to a bench in the corner of the gallery. Hope was with Catherine somewhere, probably being shown off to every visitor who would look. Margaret spent her whole life trying to be perfect, trying to make the right choice every time, and when she couldn't, when she made a mistake, she hid it. Let it eat her alive for 50 years. And you? I almost did the same thing. When I found that Vermeer, my first instinct was to keep it secret, use it to solve my problems. Nobody would ever know. What stopped you? Sarah thought about that night in the study, hope kicking in her belly, the weight of Margaret's confession in her hands. My daughter, I thought about what kind of world I wanted her to grow up in, a world where lies are acceptable if they serve good purposes, or a world where truth matters even when it hurts. The young woman was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm a museum studies student. I came because I read about you, about how you gave everything away instead of keeping it. I didn't give it away. I put it to work. My professor said you were naive, that you could have been set for life. I am set for life, just not in the way your professor meant. How? Sarah gestured at the crowds moving through the gallery, at the exhibits telling stories that had been hidden for decades, at the foundation offices upstairs where staff were already processing requests from families around the world. This work, helping families recover their heritage, preserving endangered histories, creating space for stories that deserve to be told. This is what I was meant to do. I just didn't know it until Margaret's inheritance forced me to figure it out. The young woman looked around. Really looked. You gave up $283 million. No, I invested it in something that will matter long after I'm gone. Margaret spent 45 years protecting art. I'm spending my life protecting the legacy of protection itself. That's beautiful. It's terrifying. Every day I wonder if I'm making the right choices, if I'm helping the right people, if Margaret would approve of what I'm doing with her life's work. Do you think she would... Sarah looked at the portrait again. Those fierce young eyes. I think she'd tell me to stop worrying and get back to work. The young woman laughed. Sounds like good advice. It is. Are you looking for a job by any chance? What? We're hiring. Research assistants. People who want to help families find what they've lost. It doesn't pay much, but the work matters. The young woman's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. Come to my office tomorrow. We'll talk. By December, the center had processed over 200 requests from families seeking help recovering lost artwork. Some were simple pieces with clear provenance that could be traced and returned. Others were complex, requiring years of research and legal battles. The foundation funded it all. Daniel stayed on as security consultant, but his role had evolved. Now he trained other investigators, sharing 30 years of knowledge with a new generation of art crime specialists. Helen became the center's unofficial historian, giving tours to visitors and sharing stories about Margaret that no one else knew. Catherine managed operations with an efficiency that surprised everyone, including herself. She'd spent her whole life afraid of taking risks. Now she took them every day. I don't recognize myself anymore, she told Sarah one evening. The woman I was a year ago, she would have laughed at what I'm doing now. Do you regret it? Not for a second. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm part of something that matters. Sarah pulled her mother into a hug. Margaret would have liked you. You think so? I know so. She spent 45 years alone because she didn't know how to ask for help. You're helping me make sure no one else has to carry that burden alone. On Christmas Eve, exactly 2 years after Sarah had first arrived at the mansion, she sat in the study with Hope on her lap. Her daughter was 18 months old now, walking, talking in fragments, getting into everything. Mama, book. You want to read a book. Book? Sarah pulled Jane Eyre from the shelf. The same copy where Margaret had hidden the attic key. She'd had the hollow interior filled in, made it whole again. This was your great-great-aunt's favorite book. She read it over and over. There's a line in here she loved. I am no bird and no net ensnares me. Hope grabbed at the pages. Bird? That's right, no bird, no net. She was free, and so are you. The phone rang. Sarah answered with one hand, holding Hope with the other. Miss Mitchell, this is Detective Morrison from the Pine Ridge Police Department. Sarah's heart skipped. Detective, is everything okay? More than okay. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Richard Sterling pleaded guilty today. All charges. He's facing 25 years. Sarah closed her eyes, let the news wash over her. Thank you for telling me. There's more. His cooperation led to arrests in 6 additional countries, 47 people total. The network he built over 30 years is completely dismantled. That's incredible. It wouldn't have happened without you. What you did at that mill wearing that wire standing up to him when any sane person would have run, that took guts. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose courage. That's not nothing. After she hung up, Sarah sat with Hope in silence. Her daughter had fallen asleep against her chest, warm and peaceful. It's over, she whispered. It's really finally over. But she knew that wasn't quite true. Sterling was gone, but the work remained. Hundreds of families still searching, thousands of pieces still missing, an entire history of theft and loss still waiting to be addressed. The battle with Sterling had been just one chapter. The real story was so much bigger. In February, an unexpected visitor arrived at the center. Sarah was in her office reviewing grant applications when Helen knocked on the door. There's someone here to see you. He says his name is David Mitchell. Sarah's blood went cold. David Mitchell. Your ex-husband, I assume. Sarah hadn't seen David in almost 2 years, not since he'd walked out on her and their unborn daughter, not since he'd signed divorce papers and disappeared from her life. Send him away. He says it's important, something about Hope. Sarah's hands clenched. What about Hope? He wouldn't say, just that he needs to talk to you. Every instinct told Sarah to refuse, to have security escort him off the property, to pretend he didn't exist the same way he'd pretended she didn't exist for 2 years. But he'd mentioned Hope. 5 minutes. Send him in. David looked different. Older, thinner. The confidence he'd always worn like armor seemed cracked, uncertain. Sarah, thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes. Say what you came to say. He sat down across from her desk. His hands were shaking. I've been following the news about the foundation, about everything you've accomplished, and I realized I made a terrible mistake, walking out on you, on our daughter. I was scared and selfish, and I convinced myself that leaving was the right thing to do. It wasn't. I know that now. He leaned forward. I want to be part of Hope's life. I want to know my daughter. Sarah felt something hot and sharp rise in her chest. 2 years of anger she'd suppressed. 2 years of raising a child alone while he lived his comfortable life somewhere else. You don't get to do that. Sarah, please. No, you don't get to walk in here after 2 years and demand a relationship with the daughter you abandoned. She doesn't know you. She's never even seen a picture of you. That's what I want to change. Why now? Because I'm successful, because I'm in the news, because suddenly being connected to me is an advantage instead of a burden. David flinched. That's not... Isn't it? When I was a struggling archivist with nothing, you couldn't get away fast enough. Now that I'm running a foundation worth hundreds of millions, suddenly you want to be involved. I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse. They sat in silence. Sarah's heart was pounding. She hadn't realized how much anger she'd been carrying until this moment. I'm not going to keep you from Hope forever, she finally said. She deserves to know her father, even if her father doesn't deserve to know her. Thank you. But not today, not like this. You want a relationship with your daughter, you earn it. You prove you've changed. You show up consistently, not just when it's convenient. How do I do that? Figure it out. You're a smart man. You figured out how to walk away. Now figure out how to walk back. David stood. His eyes were wet. I am sorry, Sarah, for everything. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. Only time and action can do that. He nodded, walked to the door, paused. She looks like you. Hope. I've seen pictures online. She has your eyes. She has her own eyes, and her own future. One you almost weren't part of. I won't waste the second chance. See that you don't. After he left, Sarah sat alone in her office for a long time. The anger slowly faded, replaced by something more complex. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of acceptance. David had hurt her, badly. But Hope would need a father eventually, and Sarah had learned over the past 2 years that some things were more important than holding grudges. Margaret had held her grudges for 45 years, had let them isolate her, paralyze her, destroy her. Sarah refused to make the same mistake. The first anniversary of the center's opening brought a celebration that filled the mansion with more people than it had seen in a century. Donors, researchers, families who'd been reunited with lost artwork, politicians and celebrities who wanted to be associated with something meaningful. Sarah stood at the podium, Hope squirming in Catherine's arm nearby, and addressed the crowd. 1 year ago, I stood in this house for the first time. I was pregnant, broke, terrified, and completely alone. I had no idea what I was inheriting, no idea what Margaret Whitfield had spent her life protecting. She paused, looking at the faces before her. Today, we've helped 117 families recover artwork stolen during the Holocaust. We've funded preservation projects at 43 museums across 12 countries. We've trained 200 investigators in art crime detection and recovery. Applause rippled through the room. But the work isn't done. It will never be done. There are still thousands of pieces missing, thousands of families searching, thousands of stories waiting to be told. She thought about Margaret spending 45 years alone with her burden, about the choices she'd been too afraid to make. Margaret Whitfield taught me something important, not through her successes, but through her failures. She taught me that fear is a prison, that some things are too important to face alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Sarah's voice caught. She steadied herself. She also taught me that doing the right thing is never simple, that every choice has consequences, that sometimes there are no good answers, only least bad ones. She looked at Hope, who was watching her with those big, curious eyes. But she gave me something else, too, something more valuable than any artwork in her collection. She gave me purpose, a reason to fight, a cause worth believing in. The crowd was silent, waiting. This foundation isn't just about returning stolen art. It's about returning hope. To families who thought their heritage was lost forever, to communities who thought their history didn't matter, to anyone who's ever felt alone in their struggle to do what's right. She raised her glass. To Margaret Whitfield, who carried an impossible burden so that others wouldn't have to, who trusted me with everything she had, who believed I could be braver than she was. 200 glasses rose in response. To Margaret. To Margaret. After the celebration, Sarah walked through the empty galleries alone. The crowds had gone. The caterers were cleaning up. Hope was asleep upstairs with Catherine. She stopped in front of Margaret's portrait, studied the face she'd come to know so well over the past 2 years. I hope I made you proud, she whispered. I hope wherever you are, you can see what we've built. No answer, of course. There never was. But Sarah felt something, a presence, a warmth. Like Margaret was standing beside her looking at the same portrait. Thank you, Sarah said, for trusting me, for believing in me, for giving me a chance to become someone I never knew I could be. She touched the frame gently. I promise I'll keep going, keep fighting, keep protecting what you spent your life preserving. Not just the art, but the hope, the justice, the belief that doing right matters more than doing well. A door opened somewhere behind her. Footsteps approached. Talking to yourself again, Daniel's voice gentle with amusement. Talking to Margaret. Does she answer? Sometimes, in her own way. Daniel stood beside her looking at the portrait. You know what I remember most about her from all those years investigating her stubbornness. She refused to give up, refused to let go, even when everyone told her she was crazy. That sounds familiar? It should. You're just like her. Sarah smiled. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Make of it what you will. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, There's something I need to tell you. I've been putting it off, but you deserve to know. Sarah's heart tightened. What is it? I'm retiring, for real this time. My daughter wants me to move to California, be closer to the grandkids. Daniel, no, we need you. You don't. Not anymore. You've built something incredible here, something that can survive without me. But the investigations, the security protocols, the training programs, all have people in place who can run them. You hired good people, Sarah. Trust them. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know how to do this without you. Yes, you do. You've been doing it for months. I've just been watching from the sidelines, pretending to be useful. That's not true. It's mostly true, and that's okay. That's how it should be. The teacher becomes unnecessary when the student surpasses them. I haven't surpassed you. You have, in every way that matters. Daniel turned to face her. You know what Margaret told me once back in 1987, right after I cleared her investigation? What? She said, someday someone will inherit all this, and they'll either destroy what I've built or make it something greater than I ever imagined. I asked her what she thought would happen. She said, I don't know, but I hope they're braver than I am. Sarah wiped her eyes. She wrote that in her letter to me. Because she meant it, every word, and you've proven her right. You've taken her life's work and turned it into something she couldn't have dreamed. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe not at first, but now you could do it in your sleep. Sarah embraced him, held on tight. Thank you for everything. Thank you for giving an old man one more adventure before he rides off into the sunset. California isn't the sunset. It's close enough. They laughed, and for a moment everything felt complete. On Hope's second birthday, Sarah took her daughter to the attic. The space was different now, no longer filled with shrouded furniture and hidden secrets. Most of it had been cleared out, donated, or archived, but the chest remained sitting in its pool of light a foot from the dormer window. Mama, what's that? That's where I found the treasure. Treasure, not gold or jewels, something better, stories, secrets, the truth about our family. Hope toddled toward the chest, put her tiny hands on the carved wood. Bird? She pointed at the phoenix. That's right, a phoenix. Do you know what a phoenix does? Hope shook her head. It rises from the ashes. When everything burns down, when everything seems lost, the phoenix comes back stronger than before. Hope looked up at her mother with those big, curious eyes. Like you, Mama. Sarah's breath caught, her 2-year-old understanding more than she should. Like all of us, baby, like your great-great-aunt Margaret, like everyone who's ever faced something terrible and refused to give up. She lifted Hope, settled her on her hip. Someday this will all be yours. The house, the foundation, the responsibility to protect what matters. What matters to people's stories, their memories, the beautiful things they made and lost and hope to find again. Hope pointed at the chest again. Can I see inside? Sarah carried her over, knelt down, opened the lid. It was empty now. The bonds were in a bank vault. The letters were in the archives. The art was scattered across the world back where it belonged. But something remained. A small envelope tucked into the corner. Sarah had put it there herself a year ago. What's this from? A letter? For you? From me? She pulled it out, showed Hope her name written on the front in careful letters. When you're old enough, you'll read this. And you'll understand everything. Why I made the choices I made. What I hope you'll become. What I believe you're capable of. Hope touched the envelope with one small finger. My letter. Your inheritance. The most important thing I can give you. What's it say? Sarah smiled. It says that I love you, that I believe in you, that no matter what happens, no matter how hard things get, you have the strength to rise from the ashes. Like the bird. Like the phoenix, like your family, like everyone who's ever chosen courage over fear. Hope nestled against her mother's shoulder. I want to be brave, Mama. You already are, baby. You already are. They sat in the attic for a long time, mother and daughter, surrounded by ghosts and memories and the weight of everything that had come before. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was home. The following spring, Sarah received a call that changed everything again. Miss Mitchell, this is the Nobel Committee in Oslo. Sarah nearly dropped the phone. I'm sorry, what? We're calling to inform you that you've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for your work in cultural restitution and post-war reconciliation. That's not possible. I assure you it is. The nomination was submitted by a coalition of Holocaust survivor organizations, museum associations, and international cultural preservation groups. Over 200 endorsements from 37 countries. Sarah sat down heavily. Her legs wouldn't hold her. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet. The announcement won't be public for several months. We wanted to give you time to prepare. Prepare for what? For your life to change, Miss Mitchell, again. After she hung up, Sarah walked to Margaret's portrait, stood before it for a long time. "Did you know?" she whispered. "When you chose me, did you know it would lead to this?" The portrait, as always, didn't answer. But Sarah didn't need an answer anymore. She knew. Margaret had seen something in her, something Sarah herself hadn't recognized. The capacity to carry weight without being crushed, to make choices without being paralyzed, to let go of things that others would cling to. The Nobel Prize, if she won, it wouldn't be for her alone. It would be for Margaret, for the families who'd lost everything, for the artists whose work had been stolen and recovered, for everyone who'd ever believed that beauty was worth protecting even at great cost. Sarah touched the portrait one last time. "We did it," she said. "Together." Then she went to find her daughter. On October 15th, 3 years after the center opened, Sarah stood on the mansion's front steps as the sun rose over the Vermont mountains. Hope was beside her, 4 years old now, holding her mother's hand. Catherine stood nearby, older but stronger than she'd ever been. Helen, the woman who'd kept Margaret's secrets for decades, watched with tears in her eyes. And in the distance, a procession of cars was approaching. Families from around the world coming to celebrate the anniversary, coming to honor what had been built. "Mama, why are all those people coming?" "To remember baby, to celebrate, to say thank you." "Thank you for what?" Sarah looked at her daughter, at this fierce, curious, brave little girl who was everything she'd hoped for and more, for not giving up, for believing that some things are worth fighting for proving that one person can make a difference if they're brave enough to try. Hope squeezed her hand. "I want to make a difference too, Mama." "You will, baby. You already have." The first car pulled up. Rachel Goldstein stepped out the Monet that had been returned to her family, now hanging in her living room. Behind her came David and Michael, her brother and cousin, finally reconciled after years of conflict. More cars arrived, more families, more stories. Sarah greeted each one, heard their thanks, saw the tears in their eyes, not because she wanted recognition, because this was her purpose, her calling, her inheritance. Not money, not art, not fame, but the power to heal, to restore, to make whole what had been broken. Margaret Whitfield had spent 45 years protecting 17 pieces of art. Sarah Mitchell would spend her lifetime protecting something far more valuable. Hope. Not just her daughter, but the belief that justice was possible, that beauty could survive even the darkest times, that doing right mattered more than doing well, that some things were worth any sacrifice. As the sun climbed higher, Sarah looked at the mansion that had become her home, at the family she'd built, at the legacy she'd inherited and transformed. She thought about that first night 2.5 years ago, pregnant and terrified. $52 in her bank account, standing in a doorway looking at a house she'd never seen before. Can we really live here? Yes, they could, they had, they always would, because home wasn't a place, it was a purpose, and Sarah Mitchell had finally found hers. She turned to her daughter, smiled, and said the words that had become their family motto, "Ready to change the world." Hope grinned that fierce Whitfield grin that Sarah had come to love. "Ready, Mama." Hand in hand, they walked toward the waiting crowd, mother and daughter, past and future, fear and courage, together. And somewhere in a place beyond time and memory, Margaret Whitfield watched them go. Proud, at peace, finally free. Some inheritances aren't measured in money, they're measured in the courage to become who you were always meant to be. Sarah Mitchell had inherited a fortune, a legacy, and 80 years of secrets, but the greatest gift Margaret gave her was far simpler. Permission to be brave, and that was worth more than all the art in the world.